Good afternoon, everybody. This is Eric Holloway with the National Weather Service with Alaska weather for June 11th. We do have a couple options for you to further help refine your search. A 1-800 number takes you through a menu system. And there's also a web page, weather.gov/Alaska, and you can take off Alaska and put on the 3 offices in the state, Anchorage, Juneau, or Fairbanks, and again, to help you refine your search. If you have any questions, please email the listing there at the bottom of the screen. For hazards map, 3 days in a row, no hazards, advisory, watches, or warnings right now in the state. We do have a couple small craft advisories out in the central Aleutians, but that's marine environment, but otherwise no watches even in the fire weather realm at the moment. For Alaska wildland fire information strikes yesterday, we did have roughly almost 3,000 strikes in the state yesterday, concentrated in the interior and up through the Brooks Range, and otherwise a few strikes there in the Yukon Territory. I wanted to show the precipitation estimates for June 10th, ending 12Z this morning, or about 4 a.m. There were a couple locations that had maybe a ½ inch in the southeast interior Glen Allen area and down near the coast, but otherwise amounts were less than a ½ inch, and most likely an area up there in the western Brooks Range ranged between 1/4 and a ½ inch in some areas up that way. Otherwise, scattered rain showers in the southern end of the Panhandle amounted to about 1/10 to 1/4 inch down there. For the satellite image today, you can see that low that's slowly moving east through the Aleutians near Adak. Weak occluded front out ahead of that system, spreading clouds through portions of the eastern Bering and even showing up there in southwest Alaska. Otherwise, another weak low up there near Kotzebue, vertically stacked, producing a little bit of cloud activity up that way and some showers as we saw in the precipitation map. Otherwise, another weak low just south of the Panhandle, spreading some clouds and precipitation through the Panhandle. And otherwise, some convection going on in the interior southern mainland. How does this all look on the surface map? 989 millibar low there in the central Aleutians with any broken occluded front or stationary occluded front. A little bit of rain showers associated with that system along the frontal boundary there, approaching southwest Bristol Bay area. Otherwise, high pressure through the west and in the northern Gulf with 1018 millibar high. And a little bit of shower activity this afternoon. Thunderstorms possible in the eastern interior. Otherwise, a thermal low with a trough extending down into the Yukon Territory, British Columbia. Otherwise, light rain showers there in the southern end of the Panhandle with that low slowly drifting southeast. For tonight's weather, we're looking at, again, weakening low in the Aleutians, 997 millibar low, high pressure dominating most of the mainland. Tonight, 1019 millibar high, lingering rain showers through the southern mainland. A little bit of smoke can be expected in the Yukon Flats area, and then a little bit of fog along the coastal areas, west coast and Arctic coast. And for Friday's weather, again, the low continuing to fill there in the Aleutians, 1000 millibars now. Weak trough out ahead of that system, spreading some light rain through the eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula. And then scattered rain showers can be expected over the southern mainland, maybe a few thunderstorm activity again Friday afternoon. Thermal trough through the western or eastern Brooks Range down through Yukon Territory, and then maybe a few showers over the southern and central Maine panhandle, and a ridge high pressure in the Gulf, 1,019 millibars. Saturday's weather, maybe seeing another low approaching from the south into the Gulf, 998 millibar with a occluder front, showers out ahead of that system. Otherwise, Saturday afternoon, another round of thunderstorms possible in the interior, and then weak rain showers across the panhandle with thermal trough in the area. Low temperatures for our Friday morning, we're looking at 30s across the Arctic coast there. Kaktovik 31, Dead Horse 34, Utqiagvik 31, Point Hope 34, Adigan 49, Anaktuvik Pass 43, Fort Yukon 50, Bettles 47, 40s through much of the Yukon and Kuskokwim with 40 in Nome, McGrath 49, Aniak 45, 49 in Bethel, 41 in King Salmon, Dillingham 45, 40s through much of the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians with 45 in Cold Bay, 45 in Dutch Harbor, Kodiak 47, Cordova 47, 40s through the Panhandle with Yakutat 43, Haines 49, State Capital 45. And then for high temperatures Friday afternoon, we're looking at popping into the 40s there on the North Slope with 38 there in Kaktovik, 45 in Dead Horse, 40 in Utqiagvik, and then 40 in Point Hope. In Fort Yukon 76, probably 80s again possible in the Yukon Flats, and then 68 in Bettles, 70 in Tanana, 74 in Fairbanks, Eagles 76, Northway 67, Denali Park 67, and then 70s, even mid 60s down through the Kuskokwim and Yukon Basin with 72 in McGrath, 65 in Aniak, 63 in Bethel, Emonic 61, Nome 49, King Salmon 65, Dillingham 59, 50s and upper 40s through Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians with 54 in Cold Bay, 54 in Dutch Harbor, St. Paul 52, Savunga 45, Kodiak 58, Cordova 52, Yakutat 61, 60s through the Panhandle, 63 in Haines, and 63 in Juneau. Looking at low temperatures for Saturday morning, North Slope, we're going to be looking at 30s along the Arctic coast, Kaktovik 31, 34 in Dead Horse, 31 in Barrow, and then 32 in Point Hope, Adigan 49, Fort Yukon 52, 47 in Bettles, 45 in Eagle, 52 in Fairbanks, Delta Junction 52, Northway 47, Denali Park 43, and then down through the Kuskokwim, Yukon 40s, maybe even 50, with 49 in McGrath, 45 in Emonic, 47 in Aniak, 47 in Bethel, 40 in King Salmon, 43 in Dillingham, 40s and even upper 30s through Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians with 45 in Cold Bay, 45 in Dutch Harbor, St. Paul 41, 38 in Savunga, and then Kodiak 47, 49 in Cordova, Seward 47, Yakutat 45, 52 in Haines, 40s through the rest of the Panhandle, 49 in Juneau. And then high temperatures for Saturday afternoon, looks like we'll be popping into the 40s along the North Slope, Arctic coast, 38 there in Utqiagvik, 41 in Point Hope, 77 in Fort Yukon, looks like 80s are very definitely a possibility in the Yukon Flats, 70 in Bettles, 76 in Fairbanks, 74 in Tanana, Galena 70, a little bit cooler along the coast, 52 in Nome, 61 in Emonic, 65 in Aniak, 72 in McGrath, 63 in Bethel, and then King Salmon 63, Dillingham 59, and 70 in Haines, and 60s through the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Good morning. Let's take a look at the flying weather for Friday morning. With weak onshore flow over the Arctic coast, IFR conditions can be expected up there. And under weak ridge of high pressure over the west coast, marginal or IFR conditions can be expected across much of the coastal areas of the west coast. And then with an occluded front and low pressure system in the Aleutians, IFR conditions throughout much of the Aleutians and into the Bering. And lastly, with weak ridge of high pressure over the Gulf, marine stratus will be noted with IFR conditions showing up there on the south side of Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and into the North Gulf, and marginal conditions throughout the mountainous regions of South Central. For Friday afternoon, same kind of scenario, IFR conditions along the Arctic coast, IFR conditions throughout much of the Bering and through the west coast with marginal conditions, and IFR conditions in the Gulf, marginal conditions along the coastal areas of the Gulf. Saturday morning, looking at much the same scenario, IFR conditions along the coastal areas into the Bering Sea, Aleutians, and the southern end of the Alaska Peninsula, and down through the Gulf with marginal conditions showing up there in southeast and along the mountainous areas of South Central into the southeast interior. Saturday afternoon, clearing conditions over the mountainous area of South Central, otherwise marginal conditions in the Panhandle, and IFR conditions in the Gulf and out in the Bering Sea, down through the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. A little bit of clearing there in the southwest with marginal conditions showing up in the extreme coastal areas, and IFR conditions along the Arctic coast. For past conditions, Ottenweller VFR, Adigan VFR, Lake Clark and Merrill both marginal early. VFR should be VFR by midday. Much for the same for Rainy Pass, Windy Pass, much the same. Isabel, the same with some morning cloudiness. Mentasta, marginal early, VFR by noon again. And Dehne went for VFR there with a hole in the marginal conditions. Very good flying conditions there. And for Portage, marginal early, VFR should be VFR by midday. Chilkoot and White going for VFR the entire day down there in southeast. For freezing levels, we're looking at 8,000 foot freezing levels there over the northwest part of the mainland, otherwise 6,000 feet back into Canada. Anywhere between 4 and 6 across much of the southern mainland into the Alaska Peninsula, up to 10,000 feet there in the central Aleutians. For icing conditions, between 7 and 10,000 feet around the weak low pressure system up there in the northwest part of the state. And then we also have some isolated to scattered areas of considerable moderate down between the southwest coast and the central Bering, between 8 and 10,000 feet. And finally around weak low pressure south of the Alaska Peninsula, the Panhandle, we have isolated moderate between 9 and 10,000 feet with scattered areas of considerable moderate. Jet stream for Friday, weak low pressure there in the northwest, 30 to 50 knots around counterclockwise flow. Another low in the Aleutians, anywhere between 30 and 40 knots across much of the Aleutians into the Panhandle. Into the Alaska Peninsula. And then another low just south of Aleutians, 35 knots from the west over the Panhandle. And then for 9,000 foot winds, looking at, again, the low pressure system in the central Aleutians, 35 knots around that low, and 25 knots in portions of the Panhandle, 25 knots around another low in the northwest. And for 3,000 foot winds, low pressure there in the Aleutians, again 25 to 30 in some areas, light and variable across the mainland and even down into the Panhandle. Turbulence for Friday, below 4,000 feet, southern end of the Panhandle, otherwise below 3,000 feet in the Aleutians.
Hey Sky Spotters, sometimes you're looking up at the sky and your friend is like, what is that bright thing? Now you'll be able to tell right away whether it's a planet or a star. So let's use this week as an example. Here we are at about 4 a.m. looking south. There are 2 planets visible right now, Jupiter and Saturn. First, planets are way closer than stars, so they'll be extra bright, often brighter than even the brightest stars. Second, planets, they don't twinkle, they don't shimmer, and they don't blink. And third, planets are on the ecliptic. Maybe you remember that's the path the moon, the sun, and other planets take across the sky. If a bright object fits these, it's probably a planet and not a star. Try it yourself and bring binoculars for a great view while y'all keep looking up.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's a dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things, coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the Northern Lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the Northern Lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, oh, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up, your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything, so you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the sea ice analysis for today. We still have some openings there northwest of Point Hope, open water, lower concentrations of ice through much of the Chukchi and into the Beaufort Sea as well. With that easterly flow up there opening some lower concentrations of ice, we also have, again, no ice analyzed in the Norton Sound, and that extends up into the Bering Strait. So, taking a look at the marine forecast for southeast, inside waters, variable winds 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet, Lynn Canal area. Otherwise, outside waters, winds generally from the northwest at 10 to 15, seas as high as 5 feet. For Saturday, inside waters, winds generally from the south or southeast at 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet in Lynn Canal. Outside waters, winds generally from the southwest at 10 to 15, seas as high as 4 feet. South Central Friday, Prince William Sound, winds generally from the southwest at 10, seas 2 feet. Out in the Gulf, winds generally from the east, 15 knots, seas as high as 4 feet. Cook Inlet, winds generally from the east as well. Winds generally from 10 knots and seas as high as 3 feet. And for Saturday, Prince William Sound, winds generally from the southwest at 10. Otherwise, in the Gulf, winds from the southwest at 15, seas as high as 4 feet. Cook Inlet, winds generally from the south, 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet west of the Barren Islands. And Friday's Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, around Kodiak Island, winds generally from the southeast at 10 to 15, seas as high as 5 feet. South side of the peninsula, winds from the southeast at 15, seas as high as 5 feet. North side of the peninsula, winds from the southeast at 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet. And for Saturday, around Kodiak Island, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15. South side of the peninsula, winds from the east at 15, seas as high as 5 feet. And in the northern side of the peninsula, winds generally from the northeast at 15, seas as high as 3 feet. For Aleutian Chain, Friday, winds generally from the south, 15 knots, seas as high as 8 feet. Over there at Unalaska, winds generally from the southeast at 20, seas as high as 7 feet. And for the western side of the Aleutians, winds generally from the northwest at 20 to 25, seas as high as 7 feet. And for Saturday, winds coming down in the Aleutian chain, winds generally from a northwest or westerly direction over the central and western, 10 to 15 knots there, seas as high as 6 feet south of Atka and Nikolsky. Otherwise, eastern Aleutians, winds generally from the east at 10, seas as high as 5 feet on southern side of Alaska. And for the west coast, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15, seas as high as 4 feet around the Pribs. And for west coast, Saturday, winds generally from the northeast, 10 to 15, seas as high as 4 feet there near the Pribs. And in Norton Sound, winds generally from the northwest at 5, seas as high as 1 foot. And then for Arctic coast, winds generally from the east at 15 to 20, seas as high as 4 feet there in that open water area, lower concentrations of ice, and down through the northwest and down through the Bering Strait. Winds generally from the east or southeast, 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet. And for Saturday, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15, Arctic coast there. And northwest coast, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15, down through the Bering Strait. Winds generally from the east or south, 10 to 20, seas as high as 4 feet. And for tonight's weather, 997 millibar low, slowly moving eastward, trough out ahead of that system, spreading light rain. We also have chance of scattered rain into tonight's weather. And we will have some smoke in the Yukon area, Yukon Flats. And then fog along the coastal areas, both west coast and Arctic coast. And a 1019 millibar high in the northern Gulf. For Friday, afternoon thunderstorms once again in the interior, 1000 millibar low in the Aleutians, and 1019 millibar in the northern Gulf.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.